Captain James Blackwood had plundered his way across the seven seas for 15 years, but nothing in his blood-soaked career had prepared him for what lay hidden in the Serpent's moor caves. While his crew ransacked the village above, Blackwood followed an ancient map deeper into the cavern's twisting passages. Saltwater dripped from stalactites as torchlight danced across damp walls. The map had promised treasure beyond imagination, but as the tunnel narrowed to a dead end, Blackwood cursed his foolishness. Then his torch illuminated something impossible, a perfectly circular outline embedded in the rock face. Not carved by nature's hand, but forged in steel, its surface unmarked by centuries beneath the waves. His calloused fingers traced strange symbols along its edge. With a grinding protest of ancient mechanisms, the door slowly swung open. Captain James Blackwood's boots crunched over the barnacle-encrusted stones as he ventured deeper into the Serpent's moor caves. The distant sounds of his crew ransacking the coastal village above had faded, replaced by the steady drip of salt water from stalactites and the whisper of waves against rock. 15 years of plundering had earned him the moniker, the Raven of the Caribbean. His ship, the Midnight Raven, had claimed over 50 vessels. His blade, Widow's Wail, had tasted the blood of admirals and governors alike. Yet for all his treasure, something had always eluded him, something worth more than Spanish gold. He unfolded the weathered map again, holding his torch closer. 3 months ago, he'd prized it from the dying grip of a Portuguese navigator who'd sworn it led to the greatest treasure of all ages. Most captains would have dismissed such claims as the delirious ramblings of a dying man, but Blackwood had seen something genuine in the navigator's fading eyes. "The cave will test you," the man had whispered before death claimed him. "Only those with the old blood may pass." Nonsense, of course. Yet here he was, following chicken scratches on parchment while his men gathered real wealth above. The passage narrowed until Blackwood had to turn sideways, his broad shoulders scraping against damp stone. The air grew stale. Just as he considered turning back, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. His torch revealed a solid rock wall, a dead end. "Damn you, Portuguese," he growled, studying the map again. The markings clearly indicated the treasure lay beyond this point. He ran his fingers along the cold stone, searching for hidden mechanisms or false walls. His hand passed over something unnaturally smooth. Brushing away centuries of mineral deposits revealed a perfect circle embedded in the rock face. Not stone, but metal, steel, impossibly preserved despite the corrosive sea air. The surface bore intricate symbols unlike any language Blackwood had encountered in his travels. "Impossible," he breathed. The craftsmanship suggested a technology far beyond current capabilities. No hinges, no handles, no visible means of opening it. Yet it was unmistakably a door. Blackwood traced the strange symbols with calloused fingers, a peculiar sensation tingling through his hand. Was it his imagination, or did they glow faintly at his touch? The cave suddenly felt colder. His torch flickered as though in a breeze, though the air remained still. Something about this place, this door, felt wrong. Not cursed. Blackwood had never believed in such superstitions, but profoundly out of place, as if it belonged to another world entirely. He pressed his palm flat against the central symbol, a spiraling pattern that reminded him of stars wheeling across the night sky. The metal felt warm now, almost alive beneath his touch. A low, grinding sound emanated from within the rock itself. Dust and small stones showered down as ancient mechanisms stirred to life. Blackwood stepped back, hand instinctively moving to Widow's Wail's hilt as the perfect circle began to rotate, each symbol aligning with a corresponding mark on the surrounding stone. With a hiss of escaping air that had been sealed away for God knows how long, the steel door swung inward, revealing a darkness deeper than the cave behind it. The torchlight seemed reluctant to penetrate this darkness, illuminating only the first few feet beyond the threshold. But it was enough for Blackwood to see that he faced no natural formation. The chamber beyond was perfectly cylindrical, its walls lined with the same metal as the door, etched with more of the strange symbols. At the center stood a pedestal of some crystalline material that caught his torchlight and scattered it in impossible directions, creating patterns across the chamber walls like stars in a night sky. Blackwood took one step forward, then another. Something compelled him forward, despite every instinct screaming caution. As he approached the pedestal, the walls began to glow with a soft blue light that seemed to emanate from within the metal itself. The chamber was coming alive around him. Atop the pedestal rested a sphere, no larger than a cannonball, made of a crystal so clear it appeared almost liquid. Within it, lights swirled like a miniature galaxy captured in glass. Blackwood had seen many wonders in his blood-soaked career. The treasure vaults of governors' temples of gold in the New World, artifacts smuggled from the farthest reaches of the Orient. None had struck him silent like this. The sphere pulsed once, and suddenly the walls blazed with light. The chamber filled with images impossible, moving images of people and places Blackwood had never seen, speaking words he couldn't understand yet somehow recognize. Widow's wail, the sword that had never left his grip in battle, clattered to the stone floor as the most feared pirate captain in the Caribbean stared in open-mouthed shock at revelations beyond his comprehension. Blackwood stood transfixed as images flowed across the chamber walls, figures tall and graceful, with features almost human yet subtly different, elongated eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries, skin with a faint luminescence, movements too fluid to be natural. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. These were no paintings or carvings like those in ancient temples he'd raided. These images moved, spoke, lived upon the walls. He forced himself to breathe. 15 years facing death on the high seas had taught him to master fear. This was simply a wonder he didn't yet understand. The pirate captain approached the crystal sphere, drawn by its pulsing light. As his shadow fell across it, the sphere responded, its swirling internal galaxy shifting patterns. The closer he came, the more intense the reaction. "What manner of sorcery is this?" he whispered. His words echoed strangely, as though the chamber were both smaller and vastly larger than it appeared. He reached for the sphere but hesitated, fingers hovering inches from its surface. A memory surfaced from his childhood in Cornwall. Stargazing with his father on clear nights, learning to navigate by the heavens. "The stars guide those brave enough to follow," his father had said. Before poverty drove him to piracy, young James Blackwood had dreamed of mapping the cosmos. Something about the swirling lights within the sphere connected to that forgotten part of him. With decision made, he grasped the crystal. It was warm, almost alive in his palm, and lighter than its size suggested. The moment his skin made contact, the projected images sharpened. The strange figures now seemed to look directly at him, their incomprehensible speech becoming clearer. The chamber itself was transforming around him. What he'd taken for metal molds now revealed their true nature, a material both solid and somehow fluid, with properties unlike anything known to man. The room expanded beyond what the external cave could possibly contain, defying natural law. Along one wall, symbols rearranged themselves, gradually forming patterns that tugged at his mind. Though he had never seen this language before, certain groupings sparked recognition, as if awakening knowledge buried deep within his blood. "I should not understand this," he murmured, "yet I do." The sphere grew warmer in his hand, the galaxy within spinning faster. Suddenly a beam of light shot from it to the center of the chamber, coalescing into the figure of a being, one of the strange people from the wall projections. This was no mere image. It had dimension, presence. Though Blackwood could see through it to the wall behind, it appeared solid enough to touch. She wore robes of an iridescent material, and regarded him with eyes too knowing for comfort. "Greetings, descendant," the figure spoke, her lips moving in sync with words Blackwood somehow understood despite their alienness. After 50,000 cycles, The blood returns. Blackwood's hand instinctively reached for Widow's wail, before remembering he had dropped it. "What are you?" he demanded. "Some demon of the deep." A sound like tinkling crystal emanated from the figure. Laughter, he realized. "We are your ancestors, child of two bloods. I am but an echo, a message left for those who would come after. You're saying you're not human." Blackwood circled the projection cautiously. "We walked this world before your kind rose from caves. We saw your potential. Some of us mingled our bloodlines with yours." The sphere pulsed in Blackwood's hand, sending fresh information flooding through his mind. Images of beings like her, walking among primitive humans, sharing knowledge, joining with them. "Impossible," he whispered. Yet even as he denied it, deep recognition stirred within him. "The blood remembers, even when the mind forgets," the figure said. "You found this place because you were meant to. You opened the door because our essence flows in your vein." The projection gestured, and the chamber filled with new images. Vast cities, unlike any human architecture. Vehicles that flew without wings, energies harnessed in ways Blackwood couldn't comprehend. We were the precursors. We shaped this world and many others. And when we knew our time was ending, we left repositories of knowledge for our descendants. Blackwood grasped the pedestal for support. Overwhelmed. "Why me? I'm a pirate, a killer of men. The blood cares not for your deeds, only that you live to carry it. You are one of few remaining with enough of our essence to access what we left behind." The projection's expression grew solemn. "And now you must choose. Descend. Take this knowledge and with it, a responsibility greater than any you have known, or leave, and continue your small human life until death claims you." Blackwood stared at the crystal sphere in his hand, the galaxy of knowledge it contained, and felt the weight of a choice that would forever alter his path. "Show me," Blackwood said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Show me what you left behind." The holographic figure nodded, and the crystal sphere in his hand pulsed with renewed energy. The chamber darkened momentarily, before erupting in a panorama of light and motion that surrounded him completely. He stood among the precursors now, witnessing their world as it had been. Vast cities of crystal and towers stretched toward skies where vehicles moved without sails or wind. Beings similar to the projection walked among structures that seemed to grow from the earth, rather than being built upon it. "We called ourselves the Anher," the projection explained. "We walked this world for 10,000 years, before your earliest civilizations kindled their first fires." The images shifted to show the Anher working alongside early humans, teaching, guiding, their forms towering over their primitive students. "We saw potential in your kind, a resilience we had lost. Some of us chose to merge our bloodlines with yours, creating children of two worlds." Blackwood saw these hybrid children, recognized something of himself in their features, the same high cheekbones and unusual amber eyes that had marked him as different since birth. "What happened to you? Why did you disappear?" Sorrow crossed the projection's face. "Our time was ending. All civilizations face their twilight. Descendant, ours came not through war or plague, but a slow diminishing of our connection to this world." The scene changed to show Anher numbers dwindling, their mighty cities being dismantled, components buried deep in caves and beneath seas. "Before we departed, we created 7 repositories around the world, each containing knowledge we deemed too valuable to lose. This chamber is one such place, the Gateway Repository." The sphere projected a map of Earth, 7 points of light pulsing across its surface, one in the Caribbean where Blackwood stood, others scattered across continents. Each repository contains different aspects of our knowledge. Together they form a complete legacy, but we did not leave them unprotected. The projection's expression darkened. There was another reason for our departure, a threat from beyond the stars, what we called the Great Darkness. A force that consumes worlds, that nearly destroyed us before we drove it back. Images flashed of a terrible conflict, strange craft in night skies, energy weapons cutting through unmarked cities, darkness that moved with purpose and malevolence. We foresaw its return, long after we were gone. The repositories are not merely records of our civilization. Descendant, they are components of a defense system designed to activate when the darkness returns. Blackwood struggled to comprehend. You're saying something is coming, something not of this earth. It never truly left. It merely retreated to gather strength. Our calculations predicted its return within your lifetime. The pirate captain laughed bitterly. And you chose a pirate to stop it. I steal gold and sink ships. I don't battle demons from the heavens. We chose no one. The blood chooses. You found this place because the in-her essence within you called to it. Throughout your world, others like you are awakening to their heritage, drawn to the remaining repositories. The sphere showed faint lights moving across the continents. Other descendants, Blackwood realized, you are not alone in this burden, but you are now a guardian of Gateway, whether you embrace this role or flee from it. Blackwood thought of his ship above, his crew who followed him for gold and glory. How could he explain any of this to men who would sooner believe in sea monsters than star-traveling ancestors? The crystal sphere you hold is both key and map, the projection continued. It will guide you to the other repositories and allow you to communicate with fellow guardians once they awaken. The sphere warmed in his hand, its swirling galaxy now appearing to contain miniature versions of the 7 points on the Earth map. What exactly am I supposed to do? Blackwood demanded. Find the other repositories, awaken them, complete the circuit before the darkness returns. A distant rumble shook dust from the chamber ceiling, a reminder of the world above. Your companions grow restless, the projection observes. They will not understand what you have discovered here. They wouldn't believe me if I told them. Blackwood muttered. The burden of the awakened is often solitude, the figure said with something like compassion. But you must choose now, descendant. Take the sphere and accept your heritage, or leave it and return to your former life. Blackwood stared at the crystal in his palm, feeling its ancient power thrumming against his skin. His pirate's instinct assessed its value priceless beyond measure, yet worthless to anyone who couldn't activate it. He thought of his life before this moment, the plundering, the bloodshed, the endless pursuit of treasure that never satisfied. Then he looked at the gateway to knowledge beyond human understanding. Another rumble from above, louder this time. His crew would come looking soon. Blackwood retrieved Widow's wail from the floor, sheathed it, and closed his fingers firmly around the crystal sphere. Show me what I need to know, he said. The chamber's glow faded as the projection dissolved, leaving only the pulsing light of the crystal sphere in Blackwood's hand. He slipped it into the inner pocket of his coat, feeling its warmth against his chest. As if sensing his departure, the massive door began to swing closed. Blackwood hurried through, watching as the perfect circle sealed seamlessly back into the rock face. Within seconds, it appeared as nothing more than natural stone, its advanced mechanisms hidden once more from human eyes. The journey back through the twisting caves seemed shorter, his torch illuminating the path with unexpected clarity. The crystal sphere's energy radiated through his body, sharpening his sense. He noticed details in the cave walls he'd missed before, subtle markings that might be unmarked script. Geological formations too regular to be natural. Had they been here all along, or was he seeing them only now that he knew to look? His mind reeled with the implications of what he'd learned. Bloodlines mingled across millennia, ancient guardians departing Earth. A threat from beyond the stars. It sounded like the ravings of a madman, yet the proof rested against his heart. A shout echoed from ahead, one of his crew no doubt sent to find their overdue captain. Blackwood straightened, composing his features into the hard mask of authority his men expected. He couldn't share the truth, not yet, perhaps not ever. Captain, the wiry figure of Sims appeared around the bend. Redbeard sent me to fetch you. The village is secured, but Portuguese soldiers were spotted heading inland. Then we should be away, Blackwood replied, striding past his crewmen with practiced confidence. What's our haul? Fair to middling, Captain. Some silver, trade goods. The church had a decent chalice. It will do. Blackwood's mind was already elsewhere, calculating what course to set. The projected map had shown another repository across the Atlantic, in what the Spanish called the Ottoman Empire. They emerged from the cave into fading daylight. Smoke rose from the village below, where his crew had left their customary calling card. The midnight Raven waited in the bay, black sails furled as it rode at anchor. Redbeard, his massive first mate, stood directing the loading of plunder. He turned as Blackwood approached, his fiery beard glinting in the sunset. "About time you joined us, Captain," he said, eyes narrowing. "Find anything worth the wait in those caves?" "Nothing but rocks and disappointment." Blackwood lied smoothly. The Portuguese fool's map was worthless. Redbeard's gaze dropped to Blackwood's hand. No empty-handed, though. Blackwood realized he still clutched the ancient map. Just this. A curiosity, nothing more. "And that?" Redbeard nodded toward the slight bulge in Blackwood's coat. "A trinket I found, glass bauble. No value except to my eye." Blackwood produced the sphere briefly, letting Redbeard glimpse it without allowing a closer inspection. Its inner lights had dimmed, appearing now as mere refractions of the setting sun. The first mate grunted, unimpressed. The men were expecting Spanish gold from this venture. They won't be pleased with trinkets and trade goods. "Then remind them we sail for bigger prizes," Blackwood said sharply. "The Portuguese galleon from Goa is due through these waters within the fortnight. That's the real target." The mention of the treasure ship mollified Redbeard, though suspicion lingered in his eyes. Blackwood had never returned from a personal expedition without valuable plunder before. Portuguese patrol approaching from the south, called the lookout from the beach. 4 ships, flying the royal ensign. "Back to the ship," Blackwood ordered. "We sail with the tide." As the crew scrambled to complete the loading, Blackwood withdrew his compass to check their best escape route. The needle spun wildly, refusing to settle on north. He tapped the instrument, but the erratic movement continued. The crystal sphere in his pocket pulsed once, and Blackwood understood. The Anher artifact was affecting his navigation tools. He discreetly adjusted his position, moving the compass farther from his chest. The needle steadied, pointing properly north again. Another complication to manage. If the sphere interfered with navigation, how would he guide his ship safely to the next repository? Aboard the Midnight Raven, Blackwood took his position at the helm, calling orders as his crew made the ship ready. The familiar rhythm of sailing calmed his turbulent thoughts. This at least he understood. Wind and wave, sail and rudder. As they cleared the bay, Portuguese ships visible, but too distant to threaten, Blackwood locked himself in his captain's quarters. He placed the crystal sphere on his chart table, watching as its inner galaxy slowly rotated, points of light corresponding to the repositories pulsing in sequence. "What have I gotten myself into?" he whispered to the empty room. 3 days at sea, and Captain James Blackwood had barely emerged from his quarters. The crew exchanged worried glances as they went about their duties, whispers growing with each passing hour. Inside the captain's cabin, charts and nautical instruments lay forgotten, as Blackwood hunched over his logbook, recording his discoveries in a cipher of his own creation. No one aboard the Midnight Raven could read it, a precaution he'd developed years ago to protect his navigational secrets. The crystal sphere sat before him, periodically projecting star patterns onto the cabin ceiling. Each configuration revealed different information about the Anher and their repositories. Blackwood had barely slept, too entranced by the knowledge unfolding before him. "The second repository lies beneath what is now Constantinople," he wrote in his encoded script. The Anher called it the Archive Repository, containing historical records of their civilization and their encounters with early humans. He paused, rubbing eyes raw from lack of sleep. The ship creaked around him, a familiar sound that had always brought comfort. Now it seemed a distraction from more important matters. A knock at the door broke his concentration. "Captain?" It was Sims, the ship's quartermaster. "The men are asking when you'll address them about our course. We've been sailing east for 3 days without explanation. Tell them we pursue a prize worth 10 Portuguese galleons," Blackwood called back. "I'll address them when I'm good and ready." Silence followed, then retreating footsteps. Blackwood returned to his notes, but found his focus broken. He couldn't ignore his crew forever. Pirates were a superstitious lot, quick to mutiny if they sensed weakness or madness in their captain. He carefully wrapped the sphere in velvet and locked it in the hidden compartment beneath his bunk. As an afterthought, he took Widow's wail from its wall mount. The familiar weight of the sword at his hip steadied him as he stepped onto the deck for the first time in days. Sunlight assaulted his eyes. The crew paused in their duties, watching warily as he strode to the helm. Redbeard stood there, massive hands on the wheel, his expression unreadable beneath his fiery beard. "Fine day for sailing," Blackwood said, with forced casualness. "If a man knew where he was sailing to," Redbeard replied. "The men talk, Captain. They wonder why we changed course after the caves, why we sailed east when the Portuguese galleon was to the west." Blackwood surveyed his crew, 40 hardened men, loyal to him through years of successful plundering. But their loyalty was to gold and plunder, not to him personally, and certainly not to some incomprehensible mission involving ancient aliens. "I received intelligence in the village," he lied smoothly. "A richer prize awaits us in Ottoman water. Sultan's gift ship, laden with treasures for the new Sultan." Redbeard's eyes narrowed. "That's Turkish territory. Dangerous waters for a ship flying our colors. When has danger ever deterred us from profit?" Blackwood countered. "We'll fly merchant colors until the moment we strike." The first mate seemed unconvinced, but nodded. "As you say, Captain, though the men would appreciate more than vague promises after a disappointing raid." "They'll have their gold," Blackwood snapped, harsher than intended. "I've never led them astray before." He turned away, feeling Redbeard's eyes boring into his back. As he crossed the deck, he overheard fragments of conversation among the crew. Locked away for days, talking to himself, that strange trinket. No real plunder in months. Blackwood paused at the rail, staring out at the endless blue. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the deck. In that moment, he felt the gulf widening between himself and the men who had followed him for years. Their worlds were diverging. They're still confined to gold and rum and the simple pleasures of a pirate's life, while his had expanded to encompass stars and ancient civilizations. Below deck, in the crew quarters, a different conversation was taking place. 5 men, Redbeard's closest allies, spoke in hushed tones. "The captain's not himself," growled Hawkins, the ship's gunner. "Has anyone else noticed his eyes? Something different about them." "It's that thing he brought from the cave," said Barrett, a scarred veteran of a dozen campaigns. "I glimpsed it when his door was ajar, glowing like witchfire." Redbeard silenced them with a gesture as footsteps passed overhead. "We watch and wait," he said quietly. "Blackwood's been a good captain, brought us fat prizes. But if he's lost his wits or worse, fallen under some curse," he left the implication hanging. Every man present knew the pirate's code. A captain commanded only so long as he was fit to lead. That night, as stars wheeled overhead, Blackwood stood alone on deck. The crystal sphere pulsed gently in his pocket, responding to the constellations above. According to the coordinates it revealed, they would reach Ottoman waters within a fortnight. Behind him, Redbeard watched from the shadows, his loyalty warring with growing suspicion. Gibraltar rose from the sea like a sentinel, guarding the narrow passage between worlds. The midnight Raven approached under false colors, a merchant flag that would raise no immediate alarms among the British authorities who controlled the strategic port. Blackwood stood at the bow, freshly shaven and dressed in clothes more befitting a scholar than a pirate captain. Beside him lay a leather satchel containing forged documents identifying him as Professor James Blake, British antiquarian and collector. "You look like a bloody schoolmaster," Redbeard remarked, joining him at the rail. This disguise of yours won't fool anyone who looks closely, then I'll avoid close inspection. Blackwood replied. The Ottoman border is still 10 days' sail. We need supplies and information that can only be found here. Redbeard grunted, unconvinced. And while you play professor ashore, what should I tell the men? They grow restless. Before Blackwood could answer, Barrett called down from the crow's nest. Sail ho, merchant vessel, 2 leagues south. The crew immediately stirred to action, men rushing to battle stations with practiced efficiency. Redbeard turned expectantly to Blackwood, awaiting the order to pursue. Through his spyglass, Blackwood could see the distant ship, a Dutch trading vessel, heavily laden and vulnerable. An easy prize. 2 weeks ago, he wouldn't have hesitated. Hold course for Gibraltar, he ordered quietly. Redbeard stared in disbelief. Captain, you heard me. We maintain our merchant cover. No raids until we clear British waters. A dangerous silence fell between them. The crew had frozen, watching the confrontation. That's the 3rd prize we've passed, Redbeard said, his voice dangerously low. The men haven't seen gold in weeks. Blackwood met his first mate's gaze steadily. And they'll see more than they can carry when we reach our destination. For now, we hold course. He turned away, ending the discussion, though he felt Redbeard's glare burning into his back. The crew returned to their duties with sullen movements. Whispers passing between them. Gibraltar's harbour bustled with activity as they docked. Blackwood gave clear instructions: minimal shore leave, no fighting, nothing to draw attention to themselves. He would go ashore alone to conduct his business. 3 days, he told Redbeard. Keep the ship ready to sail. The first mate nodded curtly. 3 days. Then we discuss our next move, all of us. The implied threat wasn't subtle, but Blackwood had no time to address it. The crystal sphere had revealed that someone in Gibraltar might help him decipher more of the Anher language. A scholar whose papers on ancient languages had touched, unknowingly, on precursor symbols. The narrow streets of Gibraltar were crowded with merchants and sailors from a dozen nations. Blackwood moved among them with the confidence of his fabricated identity, his pirate's instincts serving him well in spotting potential threats or opportunities. He found the address he sought, a modest house near the University Quarter. The nameplate read simply, Dr. H. Winter, Linguistics. His knock was answered by a thin man with spectacles who looked Blackwood up and down suspiciously. I'm seeking Dr. Winter, Blackwood said, adopting the refined accent of an educated Englishman. And you are? Professor James Blake, Oxford. I've read the doctor's fascinating paper on Proto-Phoenician script and its possible astronomical connections. The man's suspicious expression didn't change. Dr. Winter is not receiving visitors. As the door began to close, Blackwood produced a small notebook containing copied Anher symbols. Perhaps these might change the doctor's mind. The door halted, then opened wider. The thin man stared at the symbols with widened eyes. Where did you get these? That's a discussion for Dr. Winter alone. After a long moment, the man stepped back. I am Helena Frost. The H in Dr. Winter. Blackwood concealed his surprise. Women scholars existed, of course, but rarely operated openly. Helena Frost's male pseudonym explained much. You disguise yourself as a man to pursue your studies, he observed, and you disguise yourself as a professor, she countered, eyes sharp. Your hands are too calloused for a lifetime of turning pages, Professor Blake, and you move like a man accustomed to violence. Blackwood smiled, despite himself. It seems we both have our secrets, Doctor. Mine involve these symbols and where I found them. Come in, she said after a moment's consideration. But know that I keep a pistol within reach, and I know how to use it. Her study was cramped, but meticulously organized, walls lined with texts in dozens of languages. Helena examined the copied symbols with growing excitement. These match fragments found in North Africa and Greece, she said. Academics dismiss them as hoaxes or misidentified Greek variants, but I've long suspected they represent something else entirely. She looked up sharply. Where did you find these? If I told you, would you help me translate more? That depends on whether you're telling the truth. Blackwood made a split-second decision. What if I could show you not just symbols, but proof of a civilization that predates all known human history? Helena's eyes gleamed with scholarly hunger. I'd say you found yourself a translator, whoever you really are. Blackwood returned to the Midnight Raven on the third day, Helena Frost at his side. The crew eyed the slender figure suspiciously, unaware of her true gender beneath the masculine attire she wore for public appearances. A scholar joins us temporarily, Blackwood announced. Dr. Winter will be accorded the respect of any officer aboard this vessel. Redbeard stepped forward, arms crossed over his massive chest. A word, Captain, privately. The tension on deck was palpable as Blackwood followed his first mate to the stern. Helena remained by the gangplank, her keen eyes taking in every detail of the ship and its crew. Have you lost your mind completely? Redbeard hissed. Bringing strangers aboard? Passing up prizes? The men are ready to mutiny, and I'm finding it harder to argue against them. This voyage is more important than you can comprehend, Blackwood replied. I need you with me, old friend. You've trusted me through worse situations. Trusted you to lead us to gold, not chase fantasies. Redbeard glanced at Helena. And what does that bookworm offer that's worth risking all our necks? Before Blackwood could answer, a commotion erupted amidship. Barrett and Hawkins stood toe-to-toe with Silver and Matthews, the former pair loyal to Redbeard, the latter to Blackwood. The captain's bewitched, Barrett was shouting. We should clap him in irons before he dooms us all. Matthews drew his cutlass. Touch the captain, and I'll gut you where you stand. The crew quickly divided, weapons appearing in hands. Blackwood strode forward, hand on Widow's Whale's hilt. Stand down, he commanded. Any man who spills blood on my deck will feed the shark. The familiar authority in his voice gave the mutineers pause. All except Barrett, who lunged at Matthews with a roar. Steel met steel as cutlasses clashed. Blackwood drew Widow's Whale in a fluid motion, its distinctive blade gleaming in the afternoon sun. With 2 quick steps, he deflected Barrett's next strike and pressed his own blade against the man's throat. I said stand down, he repeated, voice deadly quiet. For a heartbeat it seemed Barrett might continue his rebellion. Then a small object struck the deck between the factions, a silver dagger, landing point first, quivering in the wood. All eyes turned to old Isaac, the ship's cook. The aged Jamaican rarely spoke, but when he did, even Redbeard listened. He imped forward, retrieving his dagger. 17 years ago, Isaac said, his voice like gravel. This blade saved Captain Blackwood's life when Spanish Marines boarded the Seaward Queen. He was first mate then. Could have fled, saved himself. Instead, he stood over me while I bled, fought off 3 Marines. Isaac turned, addressing the crew. Man's earned the right to be followed, even when his course ain't clear to lesser minds. Blackwood nodded gratefully to the old cook. The gesture carried weight. Isaac had stood by him longer than any man aboard. The standoff slowly dissolved, weapons lowering. Barrett stepped back, though hatred still burned in his eyes. Redbeard watched the proceedings with a calculating expression. The ship is yours, Captain, for now, but when we reach Ottoman waters, we expect the prize you promised. Blackwood recognized the temporary reprieve for what it was. He had days, not weeks, to bring his crew around. Return to your duties, he ordered. Dr. Winter, to my cabin. We have work to do. Once inside, Helena removed her hat, allowing her auburn hair to fall free. Your men nearly killed each other, she observed calmly. Is this typical of your command style? These are unusual circumstances. Blackwood unlocked his sea chest, removing the crystal sphere. Time to show you what we're truly after. The sphere activated at his touch, filling the cabin with swirling lights. Helena gasped, instinctively reaching toward the display. Extraordinary, she whispered. No mechanical apparatus, no visible power source. Her academic detachment crumbled as the sphere projected her script across the walls. She moved from one glowing symbol to another, her fingers tracing their outlines in the air. It's connected to the fragments I've studied, but far more complex, a complete language system. Her eyes shone with excitement. Where did you find this? In a cave inside a repository left by beings who called themselves the Unher. Blackwood briefly explained his discovery and the revelation of his bloodline. Helena listened with growing amazement, her initial skepticism giving way to scholarly enthusiasm. If what you say is true, this rewrites human history entirely. The sphere suddenly pulsed brightly, reacting to the raised voices and clash of steel outside. The cabin door burst open as Redbeard backed in, sword drawn, blood streaming from a cut on his arm. "Mutiny," he growled. "Barrett and Hawkins have rallied half the crew." Helena clutched the sphere protectively as Blackwood seized Widow's way. The crystal's glow intensified, spreading to engulf the blade. Symbols appeared along its steel, previously invisible markings awakening to the Unher energy. "What in hell?" Redbeard stared as the sword transformed before his eyes. Blackwood felt power flowing from the sphere through his body to the ancient blade. Knowledge poured into his mind. The sword had been forged with Unher metals, one of many artifacts they had left in human hands. "Stay behind me," he told Helena, striding onto the deck where chaos had erupted once more. Dark clouds gathered with unnatural speed as Blackwood emerged onto the deck, Widow's wail glowing with ethereal blue light. The mutineers faltered at the sight, superstitious fear crossing their faces. "What devilry is this?" Barrett backed away, cutlass wavering. Blackwood advanced steadily, the awakened blade humming with energy. "This is your last chance to stand down," he said, his voice carrying over the rising wind. Barrett hesitated, but Hawkins rallied the mutineers. "It's some trick. Take him." Lightning split the sky as the first raindrops fell. 3 men rushed Blackwood simultaneously. Widow's wail moved with impossible speed, disarming 2 with precise strikes, while Blackwood sidestepped the third. No blood was drawn, yet the defeated men collapsed as if their strength had been sapped. The display gave the remaining mutineers pause. In that moment of hesitation, the storm struck with full fury. Wind howled across the deck, driving rain in horizontal sheets. Waves rose around the Midnight Raven, tossing the ship like a toy. Men scrambled for handholds as water crashed over the rails. "Secure the rigging," Blackwood shouted, his captain's instincts taking over. All hands to stations. The immediate threat to survival overwhelmed thoughts of mutiny. Even Barrett and his followers obeyed, working alongside loyal crewmen to keep the ship from foundering. Blackwood fought his way to the helm, relieving the struggling helmsman. The wheel bucked in his hands as he struggled to keep the Raven into the wind. "This is no natural storm," Helena shouted over the gale, clutching the mainmast for support. The crystal sphere glowed brightly in her other hand, pulsing in rhythm with the lightning. "The artifact is reacting to something." A massive wave crashed over the bow, sweeping 2 men overboard. As the ship heeled dangerously, Blackwood caught sight of the figurehead, the carved raven that gave the ship its name. Its wooden eyes gleamed with the same blue light as his sword. The ship, he realized suddenly, the figurehead is responding to the sphere. Helena followed his gaze, comprehension dawning. Of course, the Unher wouldn't just leave artifacts, they'd leave vessels capable of reaching their repositories. Another wave struck, nearly capsizing them. Men screamed as rigging snapped, the foremast cracking under the strain. "The sphere," Blackwood called. "Bring it to the figurehead." Helena fought her way forward, the crystal clutched tight against her chest. Blackwood abandoned the helm to Redbeard and followed, using Widow's wail to illuminate the treacherous, flooded deck. Together they reached the bow where the wooden Raven thrashed as if alive, straining against its moorings. Helena held the sphere toward it, and the figurehead responded, its beak opening to reveal a hollow cavity perfectly sized for the crystal. "It's a key," she shouted over the howling wind. Blackwood took the sphere from her and thrust it into the cavity. The effect was immediate. The figurehead closed around the crystal, and blue light spread through the ship's structure. The deck beneath their feet hummed with energy. The storm still raged, but the midnight raven no longer struggled against it. The ship cut through mountainous waves with impossible stability, its hull shedding water like a duck's feathers. "The ship is unmade," Blackwood said in wonder, "or at least built with their materials." Memories flooded his mind, how he'd discovered the abandoned vessel years ago, inexplicably preserved despite decades adrift. How he'd felt drawn to it, compelled to make it his own. The Raven had always been faster than any ship in the Caribbean, more resilient in battle. "You were meant to find it," Helena said, as if reading his thoughts. "Just as you were meant to find the repository." As the crew gaped at their transformed vessel, Redbeard approached cautiously. "What manner of craft is this, Captain? What have we been sailing all these years?" Before Blackwood could answer, the storm abruptly ceased. Not gradually as natural tempests do, but as if a curtain had been drawn aside. Stars appeared in a clear sky, and an unnatural calm fell over the sea. "Look there," Silver called from the crow's nest, pointing ahead. Where there had been open ocean minutes before, an island now rose from the mist, an island on no chart, its shore lined with structures half submerged in the sea. Ancient towers of crystal and metal gleamed in the moonlight, their architecture unmistakably similar to the chamber Blackwood had discovered. "The storm drove us off course," Redbeard said, consulting the compass. The needle spun wildly, refusing to settle. "No," Blackwood replied quietly. "It drove us exactly where we needed to go." Helena studied the island with scholarly intensity. Those structures there identical to the projections from the sphere. This was an Anhur outpost. The midnight raven glided toward the island of its own accord, the awakened figurehead guiding them to a natural harbor among the ruins. "Captain," called old Isaac from the bow, his weathered face pale with awe. "The waters beneath us." Blackwood joined him at the rail. Below the crystal-clear water lay a submerged city, streets and buildings preserved in perfect detail despite centuries underwater. At its center stood a massive domed structure, the architectural match to the repository he'd discovered in the cave. "What happens now?" asked Redbeard, the last traces of mutiny forgotten in the face of this wonder. "Now," said Blackwood, "we discover why we were brought here." Dawn revealed the true scope of the submerged city. The midnight raven floated above streets and buildings visible through crystal-clear waters, preserved as though the sea had claimed them only yesterday, rather than millennia ago. "It's extraordinary," Helena murmured, sketching rapidly in her notebook. "The architecture suggests a civilization far more advanced than anything in recorded history." Blackwood stood at the rail, studying the massive domed structure at the city's heart. "Another repository," he said with certainty, "larger than the first." The crew had gathered in small groups, their earlier conflict temporarily forgotten in the face of this discovery. Even Barrett and his fellow mutineers seemed subdued, eyeing the ruins with superstitious awe. "How do we reach it?" Redbeard asked, joining Blackwood. Their relationship remained strained, but the first mate's curiosity had overcome his resentment for now. "I don't know," Blackwood admitted. "It must be 50 feet below the surface." As if in response to his words, a section of the midnight raven's hull shifted. Planks that had appeared solid wood, reconfigured with mechanical precision, revealing a hidden compartment beneath the forecastle. "Captain," called Matthews, who had discovered the opening, "you need to see this." Inside the compartment lay 6 objects that resembled elongated glass eggs, each large enough to encase a man's head. Tubes of a flexible material were attached to them, connected to small devices with straps. Helena examined one cautiously. "Breathing apparatus," she said with growing excitement. "Similar to designs Leonardo da Vinci once sketched, but far more sophisticated. These would allow exploration underwater." The Anhur left us the means to reach their temple, Blackwood realized. Redbeard lifted one of the glass eggs, surprisingly light, despite its appearance. These frail things are meant to keep a man from drowning. I'll test one myself, Blackwood decided. Along with Dr. Winter and 2 volunteers, silence fell across the deck. After a moment, old Isaac stepped forward. I'll go, Captain. These old bones still have some adventure left in them. Matthews joined him. I stand with the captain. Blackwood nodded gratefully. Prepare yourselves. We descend within the hour. While Helena and the volunteers familiarized themselves with the strange devices, Blackwood took Redbeard aside. You have command while I'm below, he said. Keep the peace among the men. Redbeard's expression darkened. And if you don't return, then sail for Gibraltar, and forget you ever saw this place. Blackwood held his first mate's gaze. But we both know you won't do that. Whatever you think of my decisions, you want answers as much as I do. A reluctant smile cracked Redbeard's stern face. Damn you, Blackwood, always knowing a man's mind, better than he knows it himself. They clasped forearms, the gesture of respect between captain and first mate that had sustained their partnership through years of piracy. The breathing devices proved surprisingly intuitive. The glass egg fit over the head, creating a seal at the neck, while the attached mechanisms somehow extracted breathable air from the water itself. It was technology centuries beyond anything the finest minds of Europe could conceive. Blackwood, Helena, Isaac, and Matthews lowered themselves over the side, the strange apparatus allowing them to speak to each other underwater. The descent to the temple was like sinking into a dream. Fish swam undisturbed through the ruins. Colorful corals had claimed some structures, but much remained pristine. The metal doesn't corrode, Helena observed, running her hand along a building. Another Anhur material unknown to modern science. They followed a wide avenue toward the central dome. Statues lined the path, depicting the tall, elegant Anhur in various poses. Some held spheres similar to the one Blackwood had found. The temple itself was magnificent, a perfect hemisphere of what appeared to be crystal, its surface etched with constellations recognizable, despite the millennia that had passed. A circular doorway stood open at its base, as if expecting visitors. It's remarkably preserved, Helena said, as though it was designed to be submerged. Perhaps it was, Blackwood replied. The Anhur may have known the waters would rise. They swam through the entrance into a space that defied explanation. Though completely underwater, the temple's interior contained a pocket of air. As they emerged from the water onto a smooth floor, they removed their breathing devices in amazement. How is this possible? Matthews whispered, voice echoing in the vast chamber. Helena studied the walls where a thin, shimmering barrier separated water from air, some kind of field that repels water but allows solid matter to pass through. The principles behind it would revolutionize maritime technology. The chamber's layout resembled the cave repository, but on a grander scale. Pedestals holding various artifacts lined the perimeter, while the center featured a raised platform with a circular indentation. The sphere belongs there, Blackwood said, frustrated that the crystal remained with the ship. Without it, we can't activate this repository. Old Isaac pointed to a recess in the wall. Captain, look there. A panel slid open at their approach, revealing a second crystal sphere, identical to the one in the Midnight Raven's figurehead. A redundancy system, Helena said. The Anhur left nothing to chance. Blackwood took the sphere, feeling the familiar warmth as it activated at his touch. The chamber responded immediately, lights flowing along pathways in the floor and walls. The air hummed with energy as he placed the crystal into the central platform. The repository awoke, and knowledge beyond human understanding filled the chamber. The activated sphere cast the underwater chamber in ethereal blue light, projecting a three-dimensional map of Earth that hovered above the central platform. 7 points of light pulsed across the continents, 2 now glowing brighter than the others. The repositories, Helena breathed, circling the projection, each one in a different part of the world. Blackwood recognized the locations: the Caribbean cave where he'd found the first sphere, this underwater city, and 5 others scattered across continents. Lines of energy connected them in a complex web that reminded him of navigational charts. "These lines," Helena said, noting his expression. "Ancient cultures built monuments along these energy pathways without understanding their true purpose. The Anhur must have used them somehow." Old Isaac approached cautiously, his weathered face illuminated by the projection. "I've heard tales of such things, places where the veil between worlds grows thin." Matthews remained by the entrance, watching the water barrier with nervous fascination. His hand never strayed far from his cutlass. Blackwood studied the repository locations: one in the Ottoman Empire, as I suspected, another in what appears to be Egypt, the remainder in the Americas, the Orient, and, he frowned, what the Portuguese call Hindustan. "An enormous undertaking," Helena said, making rapid notes, "to establish outposts across the entire world. The Anhur must have been everywhere." The sphere pulsed, responding to her words. New projections appeared, images of Anhur vessels traversing oceans, establishing settlements on every continent. Ancient humans watched in awe as the advanced beings shared knowledge of agriculture, mathematics, astronomy. They were teaching us, Helena realized, guiding human development, until something drove them away, Blackwood said. The projection shifted to show the Anhur departing, their numbers dwindling. The great darkness they spoke of. A subtle movement caught his eye. Matthews edging closer to the sphere, his expression calculated. Something in the man's demeanor had changed. "Fascinating technology," Matthews said, his accent suddenly different, more refined than the rough sailor's speech he'd used before. "Worth a king's ransom to the right buyer." Blackwood's hand moved to Widow's Wail. "Step back from the sphere, Matthews." The crewman smiled coldly. "You finally noticed. I wondered how long I could maintain the charade." He drew his cutlass. "Redbeard suspected you'd found something valuable in that cave. He sent me to learn what it was." "You're working for Redbeard?" Old Isaac asked, betrayal in his voice. "For whoever pays best," Matthews replied. "And I believe the Ottoman Sultan would pay handsomely for artifacts that defy natural law." He lunged suddenly, not at Blackwood but at Helena, seizing her and pressing his blade to her throat. "The sphere, Captain." "Now." Blackwood held perfectly still, measuring the distance between them. Matthews had chosen his position well, keeping Helena between them. "The sphere won't activate for you," Blackwood said calmly. "It responds only to Anhur blood. Then you'll have to come along to demonstrate its powers," Matthews replied. "I'm sure the Sultan's scholars would love to study you as well." Helena met Blackwood's eyes, a silent message passing between them. Her hand slowly moved toward a pouch at her belt. "The Sultan," Old Isaac scoffed, drawing Matthew's attention. "You think too small, boy. The Spanish would pay more, or the British crown." In that split second of distraction, Helena struck. From her pouch came a handful of powder that she flung into Matthew's face. The man recoiled, coughing and cursing, as the irritant blinded him. Blackwood moved instantly, Widow's Wail singing through the air. Not to kill, the flat of the blade struck Matthew's wrist, sending his cutlass clattering to the floor. But Matthews was no common sailor. He recovered with the trained reflexes of a professional fighter, producing a hidden dagger. He lunged for the sphere, hatred contorting his features. "Stop!" Helena cried as both men reached for the crystal simultaneously. The sphere flared with blinding intensity. The temple's architecture responded, sections of wall sliding open to reveal mechanisms dormant for millennia. From recesses in the ceiling emerged crystalline constructs that glided through the air with deliberate purpose. Guardians, Blackwood realized, recognizing them from the first repository's projections. The constructs converged on Matthews, who slashed futilely at them with his dagger. Beams of light emerged from their centers, scanning him. Finding no trace of unmarked blood, they emitted a high-pitched tone. Matthews screamed as energy engulfed him, his body convulsing. When the light faded, he collapsed to the floor, breathing but unconscious. "The temple defends itself against intruders," Helena said shakily. A deep rumbling shook the structure. Cracks appeared in the crystalline walls as ancient mechanisms, awakened after too many centuries, began to fail. "The activation has destabilized it," Blackwood said. "We need to leave now." Old Isaac hoisted the unconscious Matthews over his shoulder with surprising strength. "What about him?" "We take him," Blackwood decided. "Securing the sphere, he'll answer for his betrayal." They donned their breathing devices as water began breaching the temple's barriers. The swim back was treacherous, debris falling around them as the ancient structure collapsed. Only the sphere's glow guided them through increasingly turbid water. They surfaced beside the Midnight Raven to find chaos. On the deck above, steel clashed against steel. Redbeard had seized his opportunity. They were seized the moment they climbed aboard. Barrett and Hawkins disarmed Blackwood before he could draw Widow's wail, while other mutineers restrained Helena and Old Isaac. Matthews, still unconscious, was unceremoniously dumped on the deck. Redbeard stood at the helm, Blackwood's sword now strapped to his own hip, the ultimate symbol of captaincy usurped. "Welcome back, Captain," he said, the title mockingly emphasized. Or should I say, former captain. The loyal crewman had been corralled at the bow, guarded by armed mutineers. Several bodies lay covered on the deck, the price of resistance. "This is how you repay 15 years of successful command?" Blackwood asked, surveying the men who had turned against him. Some avoided his gaze, others stared back defiantly. "Success," Redbeard laughed harshly. "We've passed a dozen fat prizes in the last month while you chased phantoms." He gestured toward the underwater ruins. "Trinkets and ruins won't fill the men's pockets." Blackwood measured his options. The crystal sphere had been taken from him, now secured in a chest near Redbeard's feet. Without it, Widow's wail would remain dormant. His loyalists were outnumbered. "What is your intent, then?" he asked. "Abandon me here?" "Oh no," Redbeard smiled coldly. "The men deserve better entertainment, a proper trial for their former captain." They bound Blackwood to the mainmast while Redbeard arranged a mockery of court-martial. Helena and Old Isaac were forced to kneel nearby, guarded but not bound, considered less of a threat. "James Blackwood," Redbeard began formally, pacing before the assembled crew. "You stand accused of betraying the articles of piracy, abandoning the pursuit of plunder, and endangering this ship and crew in pursuit of personal obsession." The charges continued, each more exaggerated than the last. Some crewmen nodded in agreement while others looked uncomfortable with the proceedings. Blackwood remained silent throughout, his mind working on escape. His gaze repeatedly fell on the chest containing the sphere. "If he could reach it, what say you to these charges?" Redbeard finally demanded. "I say you know nothing of what's truly at stake," Blackwood replied evenly. "There are forces beyond our world that threaten all mankind. What I've discovered is worth more than all the gold in the Spanish Main." Redbeard scoffed. "Listen to him. Spirits and demons and ancient magic. Has madness claimed you completely?" "Show them," Blackwood nodded toward the chest. "Open the sphere. Let them see for themselves." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Redbeard's face. "More tricks and illusions." "The truth," Blackwood countered, "unless you fear what it might reveal." It was a calculated challenge to Redbeard's authority, one the first mate couldn't ignore without appearing weak before the crew. With obvious reluctance, he opened the chest and removed the crystal sphere. Nothing happened. The sphere remained dormant in his hands, its internal galaxy dull and lifeless. "Your magical trinket seems broken," Redbeard mocked. "It responds only to unmarked blood," Helena called out. As Matthews discovered to his cost, Redbeard glanced at the still unconscious spine. "More lies. Then let me touch it," Blackwood said. If nothing happens, you've proven your point. After a moment's deliberation, Redbeard approached, holding the sphere just beyond Blackwood's reach. No tricks, or the doctor dies first. No tricks, Blackwood agreed. Redbeard moved the sphere closer, allowing Blackwood's bound fingers to brush its surface. Immediately the crystal awakened, light swirling within its depths. The crew gasped as its glow spread to Blackwood's skin, illuminating the veins in his hand with ethereal blue. Blood calls to blood, Blackwood said quietly. The unhurt chose their descendants carefully. Startled, Redbeard jerked the sphere away. His expression hardened from mockery to genuine fear, and fear in a man like Redbeard quickly transformed to violence. Witchcraft, he spat. You've damned your soul for power. Not witchcraft, science beyond our understanding. Blackwood addressed the crew directly. Think, men. Have I ever led you astray? Have I not always brought you victory and wealth? Until recently, Barrett interjected. When you began talking to yourself in your cabin and passing up prizes, because I glimpsed something more valuable than gold. Blackwood strained against his bonds. You've all seen the ruins below. A civilization that sailed the stars as we sail the sea. Their knowledge could transform our world. Redbeard drew Widow's wail, the blade remaining ordinary steel in his hands. He pressed its tip to Blackwood's chest. Enough. The trial is concluded. The sentences wait. Helena interrupted. Before you pass judgment, ask yourselves this. If Captain Blackwood speaks truth, if forces beyond our world truly threaten mankind, what price would you put on that knowledge? What is gold compared to the survival of our species? Her words gave even the mutineers pause. Old Isaac seized the moment, his voice carrying across the deck. I've sailed with James Blackwood for 17 years, seen him face down Spanish galleons and British men of war without flinching. This is not a man given to fantasy or delusion. Redbeard's grip tightened on the sword. Pretty speeches change nothing. The crew has decided. Have they? Blackwood challenged. Or have you decided for them? A murmur ran through the assembled pirates. Redbeard glared, recognizing his control slipping. Very well, let them choose your fate, he addressed the crew. What say you, marooning or the plank? Marooning, came the consensus after a moment. Even in mutiny, most couldn't bring themselves to demand their former captain's death. Redbeard nodded, disappointment flickering across his features. Marooning it is. We'll leave you on the island with your witch and your old cook. You can commune with your spirits until starvation claims you. Before the sentence could be carried out, a cry came from the lookout. Sail. 3 ships approaching from the east. Redbeard rushed to the rail, spyglass in hand. His face darkened as he lowered it. Ottoman warships, he announced grimly, flying the Sultan's personal standard. Panic swept the deck as the Ottoman warships bore down on them. 3 imperial galleys, their crescent moon flags snapping in the wind, approached with obvious hostile intent. Battle stations, Redbeard bellowed, temporarily forgetting his prisoner. Run out the guns. The crew scrambled to obey, mutiny forgotten in the face of immediate danger. The Midnight Raven's 10 cannons, a modest armament compared to the approaching warships, were hastily prepared. Cut me loose, Blackwood demanded. You need every sword arm. Redbeard hesitated, calculating the odds. 3 Sultan's galleys against a single pirate vessel. The outcome was grim regardless of who commanded. Give me back my ship, Blackwood pressed. I know her capabilities better than anyone, and deliver myself to the noose when we survive, Redbeard scoffed. If we survive, Blackwood countered, you'll have plenty of time to finish your mutiny. A cannonball splashed near the bow, a ranging shot from the lead galley. The next would find its mark. Redbeard cursed, then slashed Blackwood's bonds with a knife. Fight well, and I might grant you a cleaner death than the Turks would. Blackwood rubbed circulation back into his wrists. The sphere and my sword. The sword, yes, Redbeard conceded, reluctantly handing over Widow's wail. The witch's bauble stays secured. There was no time to argue. Blackwood took command, barking orders with practiced authority. The crew responded instinctively to his voice, even those who had supported the mutiny. "Hard to starboard, bring us about between the lead ship and its companions." The Midnight Raven leapt to his command, responding with the unnatural speed that had always been her hallmark. Now Blackwood understood why. Her materials in her construction gave her advantages no ordinary vessel could match. First broadside fires, their cannons roared, the shots finding their mark with surprising accuracy. The lead Ottoman galley's foremast splintered, sending sails and rigging crashing to the deck. But the advantage was momentary. The Imperial ships recovered quickly, maneuvering to surround the Raven. Grappling hooks sailed across the narrowing gap, and Turkish marines prepared to board. "Repel boarders," Blackwood shouted, Widow's wail gleaming in his hand. Without the sphere's power, it was merely fine steel, but in his hands that was enough. The clash of boarding was chaotic and brutal. Ottoman soldiers in gleaming armor poured onto the deck, their curved blades seeking pirate blood. Blackwood fought his way to the center of the melee, Widow's wail becoming a silver arc of death around him. Through the chaos, he spotted Helena being dragged toward the Ottoman flagship by two marines. She fought fiercely, but was clearly overmatched. "Helena," he called, cutting down a Turk to clear his path. She twisted in her captor's grip, managing to tear free a pendant from one officer's neck before they pulled her aboard the enemy vessel. Blackwood fought to reach her, but more Turks blocked his path. By the time he dispatched them, Helena had disappeared below the Ottoman flagship's deck. The battle hung in the balance. Though outnumbered, the Raven's crew fought with the desperation of men who expected no quarter. Former mutineers fought alongside loyalists, their recent division forgot. Blackwood battled his way to the forecastle, where Redbeard was engaged with a Turkish officer whose elaborate uniform and gold-inlaid armor marked him as high-ranking. Despite his bulk, Redbeard was being driven back, the officer's swordsmanship clearly superior. With a precise thrust, the Ottoman commander disarmed Redbeard, sending his cutlass spinning into the sea. The first mate fell back against the rail, defenseless. Blackwood intervened, Widow's wail meeting the officer's blade in a shower of sparks. They exchanged a flurry of blows, testing each other's skill. "You fight well for a pirate," the Turk said in accented English. "You as well for a pampered officer," Blackwood replied, earning a thin smile from his opponent. Their duel intensified. Blackwood recognized the man's fighting style, refined, technical, lacking the brutal pragmatism of pirate combat. He waited for the inevitable opening, then struck with a sailor's practicality, driving his boot into the officer's knee. As the man staggered, Blackwood disarmed him with a twist of Widow's wail. The Ottoman commander fell, his sword clattering to the deck. Rather than delivering the killing blow, Blackwood retrieved the fallen weapon and pressed it to its owner's throat. "Call off your men." The officer regarded him with grudging respect. "You have won this skirmish, pirate, but the Sultan's reach is long. Why did you attack us? Pirates are hardly worth 3 Imperial galleys." The Turk's eyes flicked to Blackwood's chest, where the sphere would have been. "We seek what you carry." "The artifacts of the Ancient Ones." Blackwood froze. "How do you know of such things?" "The Order of the Eternal Flame has sought them for centuries," the officer replied. "When word reached us of a pirate who had found a repository," a pendant hung from the man's neck, identical to the one Helena had torn from his subordinate, a gold disc emblazoned with a flame motif. Before Blackwood could question him further, an explosion rocked the Midnight Raven. Fire erupted amidships, Ottoman incendiaries finding their mark. "Captain," old Isaac called from the burning helm. "The ship won't hold." Blackwood made his decision. With a swift blow, he rendered the Ottoman officer unconscious, then turned to Redbeard. "Abandon ship. Get as many men as possible to the longboats." "And you?" Redbeard asked, surprise evident in his voice. "I'm going after Helena and the sphere." Blackwood pointed to the chest, now in the hands of Turkish marines boarding from the other side. As the Midnight Raven began to sink beneath them, Blackwood fought his way toward the Ottoman flagship, determined to rescue both Helena and the artifact that had become his destiny. Dawn broke over a small longboat, drifting on open water. Blackwood sat at the bow, staring at the horizon, where the Ottoman ships had disappeared with Helena and the crystal sphere. Behind him, 5 survivors huddled in exhausted silence: Old Isaac, Redbeard, and 3 crewmen, who had chosen to follow their captain rather than scatter with the other boats. The Midnight Raven was gone, consumed by flames before slipping beneath the waves. Blackwood had managed to save only one piece of her, the ship's bell, now lying at his feet. Its bronze surface was etched with symbols he now recognized as unmarked script. 3 days with no sail, Redbeard broke the silence. "Our water's nearly gone." The temporary alliance forged in battle had held through their escape, but tensions simmered beneath the surface. Redbeard had not forgotten his mutiny, nor had Blackwood forgiven it. "We'll reach land," Blackwood replied with certainty he didn't feel. "And then," Redbeard challenged, "chase your Ottoman friends across their empire. A handful of pirates against the Sultan's navy?" Blackwood didn't answer. His mind was consumed with the repository map he'd seen, the 7 points of light pulsing across continents. 2 activated, 5 dormant. The Ottomans now possessed 1 key, while the other remained with the ship, embedded in the figurehead that now rested on the ocean floor. Old Isaac shuffled forward, offering Blackwood a meager ration of water. "You've barely slept, Captain." "I see them when I close my eyes," Blackwood admitted quietly. "The unmarked, their memories flow through my blood." The old cook nodded as if this made perfect sense. "The ancestors speak loudest when we're closest to joining them." Despite himself, Blackwood smiled. In all their years together, Old Isaac had never questioned the existence of spirits or greater powers. Perhaps the cook had been better prepared for these revelations than any of them. As the sun climbed higher, the heat became oppressive. The men took turns rowing, though their direction was based more on hope than navigation. Without charts or compass, they could only follow the sun and stars. Blackwood dozed fitfully, his dreams filled with unmarked visions, star maps, repository secrets, and glimpses of the great darkness they had fled. He woke with a gasp as the ship's bell began to ring of its own accord. The sound was soft but clear, requiring no human hand to produce it. The bronze vibrated with energy similar to the crystal sphere's glow. "Devil's work," muttered one of the crewmen, making a sign against evil. Redbeard stared at the bell with undisguised suspicion. "More of your sorcery, Blackwood." "Not sorcery," Blackwood replied, placing his hand on the vibrating bronze. A beacon. The bell's ringing grew stronger as they drifted through the day, guiding them towards something unseen. By sunset, a dark line appeared on the horizon. North African coast. Old Isaac guessed, squinting at the distant shore. Ottoman territory. Unfriendly waters for English pirates. Redbeard observed grimly. Blackwood studied the approaching coastline. "Then we'll no longer be English pirates." They beached the longboat after nightfall, concealing it among coastal rocks. The landscape was arid but not quite desert. Scrubland stretched inland toward distant mountains. "We need supplies, fresh water," Blackwood said, "and information about the Ottoman forces that took Helena." "And how do you propose we obtain these things?" Redbeard asked. "We're strangers here, with no ship, no gold." Blackwood's hand rested on Widow's wail. "We've survived with less." As they made camp in the shelter of a rocky outcropping, Blackwood found himself staring at his reflection in a tide pool. The man who gazed back seemed a stranger, his beard wild, eyes haunted by knowledge no human was meant to possess. The pirate captain was gone. That identity had sunk with the Midnight Raven. What remained was something neither fully human nor unmarked, caught between worlds just as he was caught between loyalties. With sudden decision, Blackwood drew Widow's wail and sliced through his beard, cutting away the distinctive style that had marked him as Captain Blackwood of the Caribbean. Next he sheared his long hair to a shorter length that would fit beneath a local head covering. Old Isaac watched the transformation with knowing eyes. "Shedding your skin, Captain." "Shedding an old life," Blackwood replied. The pirate captain died with his ship. By morning he had fashioned a rough disguise from items salvaged from the longboat. The elegant coat that had marked him as a captain was deliberately damaged and re-sewn to resemble a merchant's travel wear. Redbeard regarded the transformation with grudging respect. "And who are you now, if not Captain Blackwood?" "James Blake," he answered, reclaiming the alias he'd used in Gibraltar. "A scholar searching for ancient knowledge. A scholar who happens to handle a sword like the Caribbean's most feared pirate. A scholar with a complicated past," Blackwood amended, the ghost of a smile crossing his face. Their first challenge would be reaching civilization without being identified as foreigners. The North African coast was a patchwork of Ottoman territories and local sultanates, all suspicious of Europeans. As they prepared to move inland, the ship's bell rang once more, softer but insistent. Blackwood lifted it, feeling warmth spreading through the metal. "It's pointing us toward something," he realized. Just as the sphere guided the Raven to the underwater repository, another Anher site. Old Isaac asked, "Or someone with Anher blood?" Blackwood replied, "Either way, it's our best chance to find what we need." With the bell carefully wrapped and hidden among their meager possessions, the small band began their journey into Ottoman territory, following an invisible trail left by beings who had walked the earth millennia before humans built their first cities. The North African sun beat down mercilessly as they trudged across increasingly arid terrain. 3 days inland, the coastal scrubland had given way to true desert, endless dunes, stretching toward a shimmering horizon. Their water supplies dwindled dangerously. One crewman had already collapsed from heat exhaustion, requiring the others to take turns supporting him. "This is madness," Redbeard muttered, sweat streaking the dust on his face. Following a ringing bell into certain death, Blackwood ignored the complaint, focusing on the ship's bell he carried wrapped in cloth. Its vibrations had grown stronger with each passing hour, guiding them unerringly northeast. "There," old Isaac pointed. In the distance, a smudge of green broke the golden monotony, an oasis. As they approached, they spotted tents and camels. A trading caravan had made camp by the water. "Let me do the talking," Blackwood cautioned. "Remember, we're merchants robbed by desert raiders." The caravan proved to be a mixed company of traders from across the Ottoman territories: Turks, Arabs, Berbers, and even a few Egyptians. Their leader, a corpulent merchant named Farouk, received the bedraggled Europeans with cautious hospitality. "The desert claims many who do not respect her," he observed, offering them water. "You are fortunate Allah guided you to our fires." Blackwood thanked him in halting Arabic, enough to establish their cover story, but not enough to invite extended conversation. They were allowed to join the caravan in exchange for labor, a reasonable arrangement that suited their purposes. That night, as the traders shared stories around the campfire, Blackwood slipped away to examine the ship's bell in private. Its ringing had subsided to a gentle hum, but it now exhibited a new property. When tilted, it drew moisture from the air, condensing droplets of water inside its bronze cavity. "A divining rod," he murmured in wonder. Another Anher tool disguised as a common object, designed to aid their descendants in hostile environments. "Your magic bell does more tricks, I see." Blackwood turned to find Redbeard watching from the shadows, his expression unreadable. "Not magic. Technology beyond our understanding." Blackwood offered the water-filled bell. "Drink. It's pure." Redbeard hesitated, then accepted. "Strange days when I take water conjured from thin air. Stranger still to come," Blackwood replied. The first mate studied him in the moonlight. "You've changed, Blackwood, more than just the beard and clothes. Something in your eyes. I've seen things that change a man. This quest of yours, these repositories and ancient guardians, you truly believe it?" "I know it," Blackwood said simply. The Anher blood in my veins confirms what my eyes have witnessed. Redbeard fell silent, weighing this against his experiences. He had seen the underwater city, watched the sphere respond to Blackwood's touch, observed the temple's defenses activate against intruders. "If what you believe is true," he said finally, "this great darkness the ancients feared, what hope have we against it? The repositories contain more than knowledge," Blackwood explained. "Together they form a defense system designed to repel the threat. But all 7 must be activated by those with the blood." Their conversation was interrupted by approaching footsteps. One of the caravan's guides, a lean Berber named Tarek, appeared with a message. "Farouk wishes to inform you we depart at dawn for Alexandria," he said. 4 days' journey if the winds favor us." "Alexandria," Blackwood repeated. The name resonated with his newfound knowledge. The great library, center of ancient learning, built on the foundations of Anher structures. "You know it?" Tarek asked, observing his reaction. "By reputation only." The guide's eyes flickered to the ship's bell, visible in the moonlight. "An unusual relic you carry." "A keepsake from my lost ship," Blackwood replied carefully. Tarek nodded, but something in his manner suggested deeper knowledge. "The desert holds many secrets, some older than man's memory. Those who listen closely can hear whispers from the time before time." With that cryptic statement, he melted back into the darkness, leaving Blackwood and Redbeard exchanging puzzled glances. The caravan's journey proved arduous but swift. Their guides knew the desert intimately, following ancient routes, invisible to untrained eyes. Blackwood observed how they found water where none should exist, locating hidden springs with techniques reminiscent of his Bell's abilities. On the 3rd day, disaster struck without warning. Desert raiders appeared on the horizon, 24 horsemen bearing down on the caravan with predatory intent. "Tuareg raiders," Farouk cried in alarm. "Prepare to defend the goods." The caravan guards formed a protective circle, but they were outnumbered. Blackwood and his men drew weapons, joining the defense. "Stay close," he ordered his companions. "We fight only to protect ourselves, not the merchandise." The raiders struck like a sandstorm, seemingly from all directions at once. Blackwood found himself facing a masked attacker whose sword technique spoke of formal training rather than tribal warfare. As they clashed, Blackwood felt something stir within him. Her memories awakening, guiding his movement. Widow's wail moved with uncanny precision, as though the blade remembered combat from millennia past. The raider faltered, then pulled back his mask in shock. "The blood awakens in you," he said in perfect English, "after so many generations." Before Blackwood could respond, Tarek appeared, engaging the raider with unexpected ferocity. "Go," he shouted to Blackwood. "This is not your fight." Confusion reigned as the raiders suddenly withdrew, taking minimal plunder despite their advantage. As dust settled, Blackwood sought out Tarek for answers, but the guide avoided him until nightfall. When they finally spoke in private, Tarek's demeanor had changed entirely. "You are one of the marked ones," he said without preamble. "I suspected when I saw your reaction to Alexandria, but your fighting confirmed it." "The marked ones? Those who carry the blood of the Sky People." Tarek pulled back his sleeve, revealing a birthmark identical to one Blackwood had carried since childhood, a pattern reminiscent of a constellation. "The Anher," Blackwood breathed. "You know of them?" "We have called them by many names through the ages," Tarek replied, "but we have always known their promise, that descendants would come when the stars aligned, seeking the knowledge left behind." He reached for Blackwood's bell, running reverent fingers across its surface. "I can guide you to what you seek in Alexandria. The repository beneath the modern library awaits its guardian." Alexandria rose from the desert like a dream, its minarets and domes gleaming in the afternoon sun. The ancient port city sprawled along the Mediterranean coast, a crossroads of cultures where East met West in a cacophony of languages and traditions. Blackwood felt a strange resonance as they passed through the city gates. Something in his blood recognized this place, awakening memories that were not his own. The Anhur maintained their largest earth settlement here, he murmured to Tarek, who rode beside him. Before the waters rose, the Berber guide nodded. The old city lies beneath the waves now, but they built deep, and some chambers remain accessible. Farouk's caravan made for the merchant quarter, where goods would be traded and new cargo acquired. Blackwood and his companions separated from the group with minimal farewells, following Tarek deeper into the winding streets. "Keep your wits about you," Tarek warned. "Alexandria houses many factions interested in Anhur artifacts. The Order of the Eternal Flame maintains a strong presence here. The same order that attacked my ship," Blackwood asked. "They serve Ottoman interests outwardly, but their true allegiance is to powers far older. They seek the repositories for their own purposes." Redbeard, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during their desert crossing, finally spoke up. "And what of our captured friend?" "The woman scholar. If she was taken by the Order, they would bring her here," Tarek replied. "Their chapter house overlooks the eastern harbor." The guide led them to a modest dwelling in the old Greek quarter. Inside they found simple furnishings and walls covered with charts and maps, some familiar, others depicting star systems no European astronomer had ever recorded. A network of descendants exists throughout the known world, Tarek explained, lighting oil lamps as evening approached. Most live ordinary lives, unaware of their heritage. Some experience dreams or visions. A few, like myself, maintain the knowledge passed down through generations. He opened a concealed cabinet, revealing an object that made Blackwood's breath catch, a stone identical to the one Helena had torn from the Ottoman officer's neck. "The Whispering Stone," Tarek said, placing it on the table, "one of many communication devices the Anhur left behind. Unlike the pendant worn by the Order members, this stone was unadorned by flame imagery. Its surface was smooth obsidian, with faint blue veins running through it, like frozen lightning. "How does it work?" Blackwood asked, reaching for it, instinctively. "Blood calls to blood," Tarek replied, echoing Blackwood's own words from the ship. "Touch it and think of another descendant." Blackwood placed his palm on the stone. It warmed immediately, the blue veins brightened. He focused his thoughts on Helena, not a descendant, but connected to the Anhur through her knowledge. The stone remained quiet. Either Helena was too distant, or her lack of Anhur blood prevented connection. "Try another," Tarek suggested. Blackwood closed his eyes, thinking of the underwater temple, the other repositories, any descendant who might hear. The stone vibrated beneath his palm, then emitted a soft tone. Within its depths, a pinpoint of light appeared. "Someone answers," Tarek whispered excitedly. A voice emerged from the stone, distant and fragmented, speaking a language Blackwood somehow understood, despite never having learned it. The communication was brief, just a few phrases before fading. "What did they say?" Redbeard demanded, his skepticism warring with what he'd just witnessed. "A guardian at another repository," Blackwood translated, "in the land Europeans call India. They've sensed awakening activity and ask if the time has come." "And has it?" Old Isaac asked quietly. Before Blackwood could answer, pounding footsteps approached the dwelling. Tarek doused the lamps and moved to the window. "Order soldiers," he hissed. "They must have detected the stone's activation. Is there another exit?" Blackwood asked, hand moving to Widow's Wail. Tarek nodded toward a worn carpet covering part of the floor. "The old city has many layers." They barely had time to slip through the trap door before the dwelling's door splintered inward. From their hiding place in a narrow tunnel below, they heard boots overhead and angry voices demanding information about foreign visitors. The passage led them through the foundations of ancient Alexandria, Greek columns supporting Arab modifications, Roman archways bricked up by Ottoman builders. The layered history of the city was literally beneath their feet. "Where are we going?" Blackwood whispered as they navigated the dark labyrinth. "To someone who can help us find your scholar," Tarek replied. and perhaps the crystal sphere as well. They emerged in a crowded market square as evening prayer calls echoed across the city. Tarek guided them through bustling streets to a spice merchant's shop, tucked between larger establishments. The proprietor, an elderly man with calculating eyes, greeted Tarek warmly in Arabic. Their rapid conversation excluded the others until the merchant switched to heavily accented English. "So, these are your foreign friends, seeking lost knowledge," he said, studying Blackwood intently. "And a lost companion as well, I hear." "This is Melik," Tarek introduced. "His family has served as record keepers for generations. The order brought a foreign woman to their house 3 days ago," Melik confirmed. "A scholar by her dress and manner. They guard her closely." Hope surged through Blackwood. "Is she unharmed?" "For now. They believe she can translate certain texts they've acquired." Melik's gaze sharpened. "Texts about the repositories and their guardians. We need to reach her," Blackwood said firmly. "Impossible. Their house is a fortress." "Nothing is impossible for the right price," Redbeard interjected. Melik smiled thinly. "Indeed, but the currency I deal in is information, not gold." From beneath the counter he produced a small object wrapped in silk. When unveiled, it revealed a carved stone cylinder covered in Anhur script. "Tell me what this says," Melik challenged, "and I will help you reach your scholar." Blackwood studied the stone cylinder, its inscriptions awakening recognition within his Anhur blood. Knowledge that should have been impossible flowed into his consciousness as his fingers traced the ancient symbols. "It speaks of the third repository," he said slowly. "The one beneath Alexandria. It contains star maps and navigation charts, not just of Earth's oceans, but of the space between worlds." Malik's eyes widened. "You truly are one of them. The blood remembers. The cylinder is a key," Blackwood continued. "It transforms when activated by a guardian." He closed his eyes, focusing on the stone. Beneath his touch it warmed and began to shift, sections rotating until it resembled a complex mechanical device. "The kinetic key," Tarek breathed. "Thought lost centuries ago." Malik bowed slightly. "You have exceeded my expectations. I will honor our bargain." Maps were produced, showing the Order's chapter house and the tunnels that ran beneath it. Malik explained that many of Alexandria's important buildings were connected by ancient passages, some dating back to the original library. "The Great Library wasn't truly destroyed," he revealed. "Its most valuable knowledge was hidden underground before the fires. The Romans, the Arabs, the Ottomans all built upon its foundations, never knowing what lay beneath." "And one of these passages leads to where they're holding Helena?" Blackwood asked. "Better. It leads to the repository itself. If our information is correct, the Order has taken both your scholar and the crystal sphere there, attempting to unlock its secrets." Redbeard, who had been examining the maps with a professional eye, looked up sharply. "This is a military compound. Even with secret passages, we're outnumbered 20-1. "Which is why we won't fight our way in," Blackwood replied. "Tarek and I will use the tunnels. The rest of you create a diversion near the harbor." Old Isaac nodded approvingly, but Redbeard scowled. "Still giving orders, Captain? Still offering the best chance of success," Blackwood countered. "Unless you've developed a taste for Ottoman prisons." After a tense moment, Redbeard relented. 4 bells past sunset. We'll give them something to worry about besides their tunnels." As preparations continued, Blackwood found himself drawn to a collection of scrolls in Malik's back room. These weren't Anhur artifacts, but scholarly works about them. Observations compiled over centuries by those who had glimpsed the truth without fully understanding it. One manuscript contained detailed drawings of the Alexandria repository, sketched by someone who had discovered but couldn't access it. The illustrations showed a domed chamber similar to the underwater temple, but with one significant difference: a central platform designed to house multiple artifacts, not just a single sphere. "It's a nexus point," Blackwood realized, "more important than the other repositories." "Alexandria has always been special," Malik said, joining him. a crossroads of knowledge. The Anhur chose their sites with purpose. As sunset approached, Blackwood prepared for the infiltration. Widow's wail hung at his side, its blade cleaned and honed. The transformed kinetic key was secured in a leather pouch at his belt. "If something happens to me," he told Tarek, "find another guardian. The Resires must be activated before the darkness returns." Tarek clasped his shoulder. "You will succeed. The blood has chosen you for this moment." The tunnel entrance lay beneath an unassuming public bathhouse, accessed through a maintenance room used by attendants. Malik's influence secured them entry after hours, the bathhouse keeper accepting a small bribe without question. "These passages haven't been used in generations," Tarek warned as they descended narrow stone steps. "We may not be the only things dwelling in the darkness." Their lanterns revealed a labyrinth of tunnels, some clearly Greek or Roman in construction, others exhibiting the distinctive precision of Anhur engineering. Tarek navigated confidently, following markers invisible to untrained eyes. "How long have you known of your heritage?" Blackwood asked as they walked. "Since childhood. My grandmother was a keeper of the old knowledge. She recognized the signs in me and began my training." Tarek glanced at him. "Your awakening came later, and yet feels as though it was always within me waiting." They fell silent as the tunnel began to slope upward, eventually reaching a junction where three passages converged. Here the architecture changed dramatically, smooth walls inscribed with familiar Anhur symbols. "We're close," Tarek whispered. "The repository's outer chamber lies ahead." A distant boom rattled dust from the ceiling, Redbeard's diversion right on schedule. Voices and running footsteps echoed down one passage. "The Order's guards are responding," Blackwood said. "Now's our chance." They hurried down the central tunnel, emerging into a circular antechamber. Unlike the underwater temple, this one showed signs of recent human activity. Torches in wall sconces, equipment scattered about, excavation tools leaning against partially translated inscriptions. Beyond an open archway lay their goal, the repository proper. Even from the threshold, Blackwood could see its massive dome and the raised central platform where Helena worked, surrounded by Order scholars. The crystal sphere sat nearby, its glow subdued. "There she is," Blackwood whispered. Helena looked exhausted but unharmed, reluctantly translating a section of wall text for a robed figure whose back was to them. Her eyes widened fractionally as she spotted Blackwood in the shadows, but she gave no other sign of recognition. "Most guards have responded to the harbor disturbance," Tarek observed. "But we still face the scholars and at least 2 armed men." Blackwood's hand closed around the kinetic key. "I have an idea. The repository responds to Anhur blood. If I can reach the central platform and activate the key, you'll be exposed crossing the chamber. Then I'll need a distraction closer to home." Tarek nodded grimly. "May the ancestors guide you." As the Berber slipped away to create their second diversion, Blackwood watched Helena surreptitiously position herself between the guards and the sphere. Whatever happened next, he would have only moments to act. Tarek's diversion came in the form of toppled equipment, sending ancient scrolls and modern instruments crashing to the floor. As Order members rushed to save their precious artifacts, Blackwood seized his moment, sprinting across the chamber toward Helena. One guard spotted him, raising a curved sword with a shout of alarm. Widow's wail answered, the blades meeting in a shower of spark. Blackwood disarmed him with a twist and strike that sent the man sprawling. "James," Helena called, abandoning any pretense of ignorance. She snatched the crystal sphere from its stand as the lid scholar, a tall figure in elaborate robes, turned in surprise. "Infidel," the man snarled, reaching for a concealed weapon. "You dare defile this sacred place?" "It's not yours to sanctify," Blackwood replied, catching the sphere as Helena tossed it to him. The crystal flared to life in his hands, recognizing its guardian. With both artifacts now in his possession, Blackwood backed toward the central platform, Helena at his side. Order members surrounded them, hesitant to attack while he held their precious relics. The kinetic key, the lead scholar gasped, recognizing the transformed cylinder. "Where did you find it?" "It found me," Blackwood replied. He placed the sphere in a depression at the platform's center, then sought the corresponding slot for the key. "You don't understand what you're doing," the scholar warned. "The repositories were sealed for a reason, to await the return of guardians," Blackwood countered, finding the keyhole. "The Anhur left these treasures for their descendants, not for your order. The Order of the Eternal Flame has protected humanity from the truth for centuries. The darkness between stars should remain there." Blackwood hesitated, key poised above its slot. "What do you know of the darkness?" The scholar's face contorted with zealous fervor. "We know it comes when called. Every activation draws its attention. The Anhur didn't flee, they were hunted. And now you would ring the dinner bell again." "Don't listen to him," Helena urged. "The repositories are meant to defend Earth, not endanger it." Guards were regrouping, moving to cut off their escape. Tarek fought at the chamber entrance, his skill with a blade keeping two opponents at bay. But he couldn't hold forever. Blackwood made his decision, plunging the kinetic key into its slot and turning it decisively. The repository responded immediately, the floor beneath them shuddering as ancient mechanisms awakened. The central platform began to descend, carrying Blackwood, Helena, and the artifacts downward into a previously hidden chamber. The last thing Blackwood saw as they sank below floor level was the scholar's face twisted in horror and the guards rushing forward, too late. Then darkness enveloped them. Soft blue light gradually illuminated their new surroundings, a smaller spherical chamber with a single crystal pedestal at its center. Unlike the other repositories, this one contained no historical records or star maps. "What is this place?" Helena whispered, her scholarly curiosity overcoming fear. Before Blackwood could answer, a voice spoke from the pedestal, which now glowed with increasing intensity. "Guardian candidate identified," it said in the Anhur tongue. "Genetic verification confirmed. Initiating evaluation sequence." "James?" Helena reached for him as his body suddenly went rigid. "What's happening?" Blackwood couldn't answer. His consciousness was being pulled from his physical form into the crystal structure before them, the memory crystal, a repository of Anhur consciousness designed to test potential guardians. Within the crystal's matrix, Blackwood found himself standing on the deck of the Midnight Raven. But this was no mere memory. The ship was populated by the ghosts of his past. Men he had killed in battle, captains whose vessels he had sunk, women widowed by his blade, children orphaned by his piracy. "You seek to become a guardian," a voice echoed around him, "but your hands are stained with blood. How can one who has taken so many lives be entrusted with protecting all life?" The spectral figures approached, their eyes accusing, voices raised in a chorus of condemnation. Blackwood faced them unflinchingly. "I cannot undo what I have done," he admitted, "but I can choose a different path forward." "Words," scoffed the voice, "meaningless without action." The scene shifted. Blackwood now stood in a merchant's counting house, chests of gold and jewels surrounding him. A man cowered before him, a wealthy trader who had once escaped the Midnight Raven's pursuit. "Take his life and claim his fortune," the voice urged. "No one would know. You could use this wealth to find the remaining repositories more easily." Blackwood sheathed Widow's Way. "I am not that man anymore." The scene changed again and again, each tableau presenting a moral challenge drawn from his worst memories or darkest impulses. In each, Blackwood faced the man he had been and chose to be something better. In the final test, he stood before a vast darkness that seemed to consume the stars themselves. Within it moved shapes that defied comprehension. The great darkness, the Anhur, had fled. "This is what comes," the voice said. "This is what you would face as guardian. It destroyed our civilization at the height of our power. What hope have you, a primitive being from a primitive world?" Images flooded Blackwood's mind. The final days of Anher civilization. Their desperate battle against entities that fed on life itself. Their decision to seed human bloodlines with their genetic material, creating descendants who might one day complete what they could not. The defense system, Blackwood realized. The repositories aren't just knowledge archives. They're components of a planetary shield. If fully activated, the voice confirmed. But the price of failure is extinction. Are you prepared to bear that responsibility? Blackwood thought of Helena, of old Isaac, and the crew of the Midnight Raven, of the bustling streets of Alexandria and the countless lives across the world, all unaware of the threat approaching from between stars. I am, he said simply. Light engulfed him, and Blackwood found himself back in the testing chamber, Helena supporting his swaying form. James, you were gone for moments, but it seemed like hours, he finished. I know. The memory crystal pulsed once more, then projected a beam of light that engulfed Blackwood briefly before coalescing into a pendant that materialized around his neck, a disk of unknown metal inscribed with Anher symbols. The Guardian's pendant, he murmured, recognizing it from the trial visions. The key to all repositories. The chamber shuddered again, the platform beginning its ascent back to the main repository. As they rose, Helena gripped his arm. What happened to you in there? Blackwood touched the pendant, feeling its connection to his Anher heritage. I faced what I was, and I chose what I will become. The platform ascended into chaos. Order members scattered as the repository's central dome pulsed with brilliant blue energy. The crystal sphere and kinetic key had merged into a single luminous entity that hovered above the platform, spinning with increasing velocity. It's transmitting, Helena breathed, recognizing the pattern from her translations, sending a signal to the other repository. The laid scholar watched in horror, his earlier confidence shattered. What have you done? The darkness will hear. The darkness already knows we're here, Blackwood replied, the Guardian's pendant warm against his chest. It has always known. The Anher didn't build these repositories to hide, they built them to fight back. Through the whispering stone still in his pocket, Blackwood sensed other Guardians awakening across the world. Distant voices responded to the Alexandria signal, repositories in far-flung locations beginning their activation sequences. Tarek fought his way to them, bloodied but triumphant. The tunnels are secure. Your friends created quite a distraction at the harbor. A tremendous boom shook the chamber as something impacted the building above. That wasn't Redbeard's doing, Blackwood said grimly. The Order members had fallen back, some fleeing through side passages, others standing frozen in awe of the energies being unleashed. Only the lead scholar remained defiant, drawing a ceremonial dagger inscribed with flame symbols. I will not allow this abomination to continue, he snarled, lunging at the hovering sphere. Blackwood intercepted him easily. Widow's wail knocking the dagger aside. Your order was founded on a misunderstanding. The Anher weren't fleeing the darkness. They were preparing for its return. Another impact rattled the chamber. Closer this time. Dust and stone fragments rained from the ceiling. Ottoman reinforcements, Helena asked. Something worse, Blackwood replied, the pendant at his chest growing hot. Through it he sensed a malevolent presence above, servants of the great darkness, drawn to the repository's activation. The hovering sphere projected a massive image across the domed ceiling, a tactical display showing Alexandria and the waters beyond. Dark shapes moved through the Mediterranean, converging on the city. Not ships, but something else entirely. Entities that seemed to bend light around them, leaving only their silhouettes visible. They're already here, the scholar whispered, terror replacing zealotry. The harbingers of darkness. Blackwood touched the Guardian's pendant, instinctively knowing its purpose. The defense system isn't fully operational yet. We need time. Helena had been rapidly translating symbols that appeared around the projection. According to this, all 7 repositories must synchronize their activation. We're only the third. How long? Hours, perhaps days, depending on how quickly the other Guardians reach their sites. Another impact, directly overhead. The ceiling cracked ominously. We don't have hours, Tarek said. Blackwood studied the tactical display, noting the pattern of enemy movement. They're targeting this repository specifically. They know it's the command nexus. A decision crystallized in his mind. The memory crystal had shown him the Anher's final battle, their last, desperate gambit to protect Earth, even as their own civilization fell. Now he understood why they had chosen human bloodlines to carry their legacy. The system needs more time to fully activate, he told Helena and Tarek. I'm going to give it that time. How? Helena demanded. Blackwood placed his hand on the Guardian's pendant. It responded instantly, detaching from his neck and floating before him, transforming into a complex device. The repositories have defenses of their own, he explained, knowledge flowing through his Anher blood. Localized shields that can hold back the darkness temporarily. Understanding dawned in Helena's eyes. You're going to engage the shield, but the power requirements will be considerable, Blackwood finished. The pendant can channel energy from a Guardian to power the system in emergency situations. It could kill you, she protested. It's what I was born for. He turned to Tarek. Get Helena to safe, find Redbeard and the others. Then seek out the remaining repositories. The Berber clasped his arm. It has been an honor, Guardian. As they prepared to leave, Helena grabbed Blackwood's arm. This isn't the end, she insisted fiercely. The Anher wouldn't design a system that sacrifices its operators. There must be another way. Find it, he told her. Complete what we've started here. She pressed something into his hand, the whispering stone. So you can call for help when you need it. Before he could respond, she kissed him briefly, then turned to follow Tarek. Alone with the Order scholar, who watched in stunned silence, Blackwood positioned himself at the center of the platform. The pendant-turned device floated before him, awaiting his command. Even if you succeed, the scholar said, his hostility replaced by reluctant respect, the darkness will return with greater force. Then humanity will need to be ready, Blackwood replied. Your order can help prepare them if you choose a new purpose. Another impact, the ceiling beginning to give way. Through the cracks, Blackwood glimpsed writhing shadows that defied natural law. He placed his hands on the transformed pendant, feeling its connection to his Anher heritage. Energy began flowing from his body into the device, painful yet exhilarating. The repository responded, the entire chamber humming with power. A shield of pure energy erupted from the central platform, expanding outward to encompass the repository. It continued growing, pushing back the encroaching darkness, spreading to cover the library above, and eventually a significant portion of Alexandria. Through the tactical display, Blackwood watched the dark entities recoil from the shield's perimeter. They probed and tested it, but could not penetrate the Anher defense. The drain on his body was immense. Each pulse of energy the shield required pulled from his life force. Yet through the whispering stone, he sensed the other repositories activating one by one. His sacrifice was buying them the time they needed. As his consciousness began to fade, Blackwood saw visions through the stone, Helena and his companions escaping through the tunnels. Other Guardians around the world responding to Alexandria's call, the planetary defense system slowly coming online. The blood remembers, he whispered, as darkness claimed him. Hours or days later, time had lost meaning. Blackwood opened his eyes to find the repository transformed. The shield still held, but now drew power from the fully activated defense grid, rather than his life force. The whispering stone pulsed in his hand, voices of Guardians from across the world calling to him. They had succeeded. All 7 repositories were online, the planetary shield operational. And beyond Earth, in the cold void between stars, the great darkness had sensed its prey awakening. The true battle was just beginning. Blackwood rose unsteadily, the Guardian's pendant reforming around his neck. No longer Captain James Blackwood of the Midnight Raven, nor even James Blake the scholar. He was the Guardian of Alexandria now, and his journey had only just begun.